This is a gas chromatograph and a mass spectrometer. And basically we do a separation of the fat into this oven. It's a gas that we allow us to separate the different fatty acids.
So after separating out the fatty acids and then analyzing it, you can definitively say that sugar that was tagged like this got turned into, not only did it get turned into fat, but it got turned into a very specific kind of fat.
Right.
I find that amazing still, because did you believe that that was true before you started studying this? I mean, because you eat fructose, and I think people know if you eat too many calories, you're going to gain weight. That's
right.
A simple concept. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying the fructose is getting turned directly into some of the worst kinds of fat in the body.
Yeah. We know that if you look at specific fat in the blood, there is huge proportion, maybe 30% to 40% of that fat in some condition can come from that sugar. And that's a lot in terms of fat in the blood that are associated with health risk.
So when people say, are you sure sugar gets turned into fat, you say yes.
Here it is.
And by the way, we can measure exactly how much this is happening.
And we can measure, yes. All the guys who got the fructose had a much higher incorporation of sugar to fat, much more conversion. And on the other side, it was not the case. So it becomes very obvious that this was a very powerful way to stimulate, that fructose was very powerful to stimulate the conversion of sugar to fat. And it has been very consistent all the time. It's very satisfactory for a scientist when you see black and white kind of answer. And with fructose, it's very black and white.
No doubt in your mind.
Absolutely not. It just blew our minds.
Eventually, the patients do have to go home, but you're really kind of keeping tabs on their sugar intake at home as well.
Well, we provide them with 3 of these a day, 3 servings of their sugar-sweetened beverage.
So if someone is eating about 2,400 calories a day, which is pretty typical, you're saying 25% of that would come from sugar.
Right.
600
so
calories.
600 calories in here.
Now, to give people some frame of reference here as to what we're talking about, roughly 600 calories. This amount of fruit here is the same amount of sugar?
Yes. About 160 grams of sugar in all this fruit.
That is a lot of fruit. Those 3 bottles, all this fruit.
Right. And these 3 bottles, absolutely no nutrition except calories. All this fruit, there's 29 grams of fiber right here and 650% of the DRI for vitamin C, over 100% the DRI for vitamin A, and I could go on.
You get a lot of fiber with the fruit, and that's important because it changes the way we actually absorb the sugar.
Exactly.
You're not going to overdose on fruit, at least not by what you're showing us here.
No.
That amount there is also just this?
Yes, there's about the same amount of sugar in those 2 bottles as there is in these 3 servings.
Now it's getting a little frightening because this is seeming pretty typical.
I've seen a lot of people carrying around bottles like that.
Have you noticed a change in how much fat in general in your patients is around the organs in the abdominal cavity?
Probably over the last 25 years that I practice, I think there's a marked change in the amount of fat that we see in patients inside their organs.
Let's take a look at some of these pictures here because people know about fat specifically, but the fat, you're talking about the fat that's inside the abdominal cavity.
Right.
You're not talking about the stuff that maybe you can pinch too much of on the sides lately, but you're talking about the inside stuff.
Yeah, so there's 2 types of fat. The fat you would pinch on somebody, and that's the fat. If you pinch 1 inch or you pinch 2 inches, that's your outside fat. That fat is probably not as bad as the fat on the inside around your solid organs inside your belly.
And this is something you can measure. You can see this fat inside someone's abdomen.
Yes. Basically, this is an axial scan. So an axial sounds complex, but it'd be like if you had a slice of a hot dog or something, and thing. You're just slicing it into little bits or pieces of salami that you're slicing. You get little round little things, almost similar to that. So you're slicing the body in an axial scan. And what we can see in these pictures is we can see the spine back here in white. We can see all the muscle, but then we see all this subcutaneous fat. And then this is the muscle. So these are the muscles we have within our abdominal wall. And then inside we see all this black. All that black is the intra-abdominal fat.
So all this black stuff is fat?
That's all fat.
Tell me what we're seeing here.
What I see here at the beginning of this study, you can see the distance from the anterior abdominal wall to this line. Okay, and then at the end of the study, all of a sudden, this individual's belly has protruded out to this line. So just in this 10-week period, we've increased that much from that time over to this time. And that's just a 10-week period.
That's pretty striking.
That is very dramatic.
Overtime editor Ann Silvio talks with CNN's Sanjay Gupta.
Sanjay, you reported on the evils of sugar this week for 60 Minutes. The major headline is that sugar is actually a toxin. I saw that and I thought, a toxin? When we give our kids candy and cupcakes, we're giving them a poison?
Yeah, it is hard to get your arms around, but what we're starting to see is scientific studies that are starting to back this up, starting to show what sugar does to the body. Even at the average amounts of sugar that we probably all take on any given day, it's toxic to our bodies.
I think people will be asking, well, should I limit my fruit intake? Should I use artificial sweeteners? Is that the answer?
I think when it comes to fruit, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. When you eat sugar in the form of fruit, you're getting lots of other stuff with it. You're getting fiber, you're getting micronutrients, you're getting a slower sort of absorption of sugar. That's much more natural. That's the way human bodies were sort of designed to take in this sugar. So I think fruit's okay. When it comes to the artificial sweeteners, one thing I learned here is that the body's pretty smart. So you always hear these stories about someone who drinks Diet Coke all day but then has 2 bowls of ice cream when they go home at night. It's almost as if your body says, wait a second, you tricked me. So you know what? I'm going to make you go out and find real sugar and feed me.
Punishment.
It's sort of a punishment, that's right. I think eating real food is probably the best piece of advice.
Okay. Real food is
real food is vegetables, stuff that's not in a I mean, meat can be real food as well, but it's stuff that doesn't come out of a box, it doesn't come in a package. Usually it's the stuff, as people have told me, that's on the outer perimeter of a grocery store. The inside stuff is usually all the packaged and processed foods.
Now, you're a parent, right?
Yeah, well, my kids are 6, 5, and 2. They get food from lots of different places, so you can't watch everything. So a lot of it is just sort of trying to teach them a little bit about what we think is good for them. I'm not the kind of parent who wants to scare my kids. I don't want to call sugar a toxin to my kids or a poison to my kids, but it's just too much, and it's doing things to their bodies that they can't possibly imagine. I think that's a point that I like to get across to them.
If there's a takeaway for parents here, if you could put it in a nutshell, what would you?
What I would say to parents is you're probably getting a lot more sugar in your kids' bodies than you realize. It's everywhere. Read labels of things and you will be shocked. Bread, yogurts. It's stunning how much sugar is in just everyday foods. Cut it down if you can't cut it out altogether.
Is the idea that sugar is bad for people with heart disease, is that new? Did people not know that?
Here's the important thing here. People think, okay, look, I eat sugar and therefore I put on weight. And if you put on weight, you're more likely to develop heart disease. People sort of fundamentally get that. That is not what we're talking about here. Think about it like this instead. When you eat a cheeseburger, you think, oh, this is a fatty food, it's going to raise my cholesterol, and that could put me at risk for heart disease. That's what sugar is doing as well, and perhaps even more so than these fatty foods. That's what we're talking about. I hate to be the grim reaper in situations like this. I like to eat what I like to eat. I like to have a good time just as much as the next guy, but you gotta be educated and then make your own decisions on these things.